Yeah, I think the Manning trial is actually a very important moment for understanding the interrelationship between politics and law. Obviously, for Bradley Manning supporters, there's been a reaction of incredulity that an individual who has exposed the crimes of the US government, particularly in Iraq and Afghanistan, that this person should be held in custody, which was deemed to be a violation of his human rights by the UN, and that he should be standing trial. It seems quite illegitimate for some. I think what it really does is it points out the way in which law and politics are actually always interrelated. It's not just that the trial of Bradley Manning reveals that politics corrupts the law, but rather that the law is always suffused with politics. And what I think is particularly significant is to look at what the apologetic claims of the law are in this case. In many ways, the law is on the side, or there's an interpretation of the law that is on the side of the US government. And what the US government is essentially trying to do is claim that telling the truth is illegal. They are trying to make the truth criminal. And this is a really, I think, key issue for understanding the significance of this trial. And it's something that we risk missing out on if we focus exclusively on, for example, freedom of press, freedom of expression, the protection of whistleblowers, all of which is incredibly important. But there's something more fundamental going on here, which is actually a right to truth. The trial tells us the importance of a right to truth. And actually that sounds a bit funny. Can we have a right to something like truth? Is there truth? I think leaving these philosophical questions aside, we can actually think about historical precedent for thinking about a right to truth. And actually when the United Nations was set up in 1945, as World War II was ending, the Economic and Social Council of the UN met to discuss the issue of human rights. And one of the very first discussions they had was about a right to truth. And what that meant at the time was a right to information, a right to accurate information. The basic idea was that individuals in a democratic society had to have access to the best and most accurate information available. It's important, of course, to contrast this moment in 1945 with our current moment. The individuals involved in setting up the UN did see limits to this right to truth. They did not think that it overrode the state's right to hold secrets. It didn't override national security interests, which in many instances require lies or require untruths. I think what's interesting about the current moment, both with people like Bradley Manning, but also with Julian Assange and also Edward Snowden, who revealed the information about NSA wiretapping, is that they're making a far more radical claim that national security is not a justification to criminalize the truth. And I think that's really the importance of thinking about this issue in terms of a right to truth. It gets to the heart of the importance of truth for a democratic society. The wider significance of the Manning trial, in particular this issue of a right to truth, I think has to do with the importance of truth to a democratic society. The claims that are made by Manning, along with other sort of activists around the idea of a right to truth, is that a democratic society can't function if the people don't know what the government is doing. And I think this is particularly important in our current moment because we do see so many instances where anti-democratic forces are at work. And so while we do have the very particular trial of this unfortunate young man, I do think the issues that it raises around a right to truth actually take us to bigger issues around economic criminality, growing inequality, unaccountable and intrusive governments, and the reemergence of fascism on the streets of London, for example. In all those cases, the government seeks to control access to the truth. It seeks to accumulate information, accumulate knowledge, as we see in the case of the NSA wiretapping, and it seeks to preserve its ability to misinform and to tell lies. And I think the Manning trial reminds us that the current moment is in many ways a precarious moment for democratic societies. And thinking about the trial in terms of all the specific issues around Manning and whistleblowing and freedom of expression, but also in terms of this wider issue about truth and its importance to democratic society, really highlights how much is at stake and how important this trial is.